YouTube, it's Will from Middle Development, and this is my 248th weekly update. Back in Studio 1A, or A1, or that's steak sauce. I don't want to get sued by them. Or maybe sponsored. Whatever. Obviously, back home from World's Strongest Man last weekend, which was a very bittersweet experience, and I will be releasing a video, hopefully, on Sunday. I'm going to record it right after this one, so I will at least have the footage. Then I'm going to edit this one, start the render on that, come back in and record some other videos I've been putting off. I will not have time to do any recording this weekend. Hopefully I'll have time to do some editing work. Usually at night, I'll probably get that stuff done. As long as the footage is there, generally speaking, I'm able to get stuff done. Let's just put it that way. I actually have to pour a patio this weekend, so it's, that's going to take up a lot of my day between framing that out and actually mixing the concrete, pouring it, babying it for 7 hours while it sets. And I work it and make it all pretty. None of that matters. What really matters is how this week went. So I sat down and wrote out a program working my way up to my comp, which is in September. September 21st will be the comp. I feel pretty good about where I'm at. I feel pretty good about competing. This is definitely not a gimme competition. This is definitely not one of the comps where I'll be walking in knowing I can hit every single weight. In fact, I'll be walking in there having not touched basically any of the weights that I'm going to be attempting to play with on that day. And I just have to trust in the program, and we'll be adjusting as time goes on. If numbers end up progressing faster than I anticipate, obviously I'll bump the numbers up, which is, hey, always welcomed. Let's just put it that way. The most nervous ones that I'm going to be working with are definitely going to be the overhead as well as the deadlift, the frame deadlift, which will be at the comp. Even at my best projections, bumping stuff up slowly, keeping in mind with my back, I'm still looking at maybe touching 450 for a couple singles leading up to the comp, and then even on my clean and press, I'm looking at a couple singles at 200. The anticipation is that these singles, both of them, respectively, will be easy singles, building my confidence towards the actual numbers. That being said, we don't really know, you know what I mean? So I'm really hoping that through the process, I'll have some some really good weeks where things will just click and fire just how they need to. And as I go and progress further into the program, I will get more and more specific towards what I'm actually working with. So right now I'm doing Zercher squats, and then within the next couple weeks I'll turn that into Zercher squats and holds. And then pretty much 6 weeks out, it's going to be actually practicing the movement of the Zercher carry, as well as the squats with the yoke. It'll be the yoke squats, and I'll be practicing those. And essentially leading into the 6 weeks, I'll basically 1 week it'll be a little bit higher than parallel with moderate weight, and then 2 weeks out it'll be comp depth, what I assume comp depth will be, which I'm planning on being just below parallel. With pretty moderate weight, I'm pretty confident in my ability to get back to doing 350 for, at least one. My goal going in now is just not to zero anything, and that's the same thing with the press. Right now I am doing some pressing out of a rack on one day, and then I'm doing clean and pressing on my second press day. And as I get closer to the comp, it'll be 2 days of cleaning and pressing throughout the week. The specificity will be getting tighter and tighter and the numbers will be getting heavier and heavier, with obviously the volume getting lower and lower. Accessory work will kind of take a back seat to needing to focus on the main movements as closely replicated as I can. For instance, with the deadlift right now, I'm doing a deficit, or not a deficit, I'm doing a pull on a hex bar or trap bar, whatever you want to call it. And I believe we had set somewhere around 14 inches off tires. As I get closer to the comp, I'll be setting that up in a rack as close to 18 inches as I can to mimic the comp as best as I can. And same thing with there's a Husafell stone event too, and I'll be just, the closest I can get right now with the equipment we have at the gym is a sandbag, so I'll be getting that as close as I can. Thing to keep in mind for me is going to be my back, so probably for me it'll be more moderate weight, so I believe the weight for our class is 275 for the Husafell. I'm going to be playing with probably a 200 to 230 sandbag at the most, and doing it for kind of just like stupid distance. And I'm hoping that'll translate over to my ability to at least pick it. In my mind, if I can at least get it to my knees, I'll have a half a shot of at least carrying it a couple feet. But honestly, even if I just get it to my knees, I'll call that a win on the day of. I've always been pretty good at those events, so I'm not necessarily highly focused on that particular event. But that's just my thoughts going forward. That's my thoughts right now, with now 12 weeks left in the program and 12 weeks left towards the actual competition. It's essentially plenty of time. I wish my starting point was a little higher, but this is where I'm at after all was said and done. The good news is my back is feeling a lot better. I'm taking a lot more care to do much better warm-ups, which is making my body feel a lot better. Now I'm feeling more sore than aches and pains, and that's definitely better, because in the past when I've trained hard, it was a lot of aches and pains. Shoulder would hurt, knees would hurt, hips would hurt, and it was like actual pain. It wasn't soreness. And now all I'm feeling is just soreness, which is perfect. That's perfectly fine. I can live with soreness. I kind of do all my life anyway, so that's great. And the other good news is taking the actual reality pill and realizing that certain movements aren't as strong as they are, or as I perceive them to be, has made me reality check and take some steps back and go, you know what, I need to actually work on this better. The most notable one is definitely the Zercher. I was testing it and testing it and testing it, but I knew I wasn't feeling it where I should be feeling it, especially me feeling it. It's feeling it in my legs a bit, feeling it in my hamstrings a little bit, but I knew I should be feeling it more in my upper back. And then when I finished training Monday and then going into Tuesday, my upper back was so sore. It was crazy how sore it was, and that made me feel really good. So it means I was focusing on what I needed to be focusing on with that particular movement. So that's always good news when things feel how they should feel afterward. And it's been great not having pain, but just soreness. That also tells me that I'm doing something right with my actual warm-ups and or my mobility work, which I still don't do a lot of. And I honestly probably won't. I've personally never seen a huge benefit in it. I can get to the positions I need to get into, and that's really all I have to do. You know what I mean? And that's something to keep in mind with mobility. I think a lot of people get a little obsessed with trying to do splits and trying to be able to keep their knees totally locked and do like the Bruce Lee bend, where they bend down and they put their head between their legs. And it's like, look, you don't have to be that flexible. If you want to be that flexible, that's fine. But you don't have to be if you're a powerlifter especially, or if you're a strongman, or just an Olympic weightlifter even. You need to be as flexible as you possibly can be to get into the positions you need to be in. So for powerlifting especially, I think people sort of overstate flexibility. Look, you need to be able to squat to depth, whatever that depth is for your particular, organization. If that means to parallel, that's what you need to be able to squat to. That means you have to be flexible enough to squat to parallel safely without a lot of pain. I would argue no pain. And that's about it. You know what I mean? For bench, you don't need to be able to use a cambered bar. You don't have to be able to use a cambered bar, or a buffalo bar, some people call it. Is cambered the right word? Cambered might not be the right word, but like a buffalo bar where it's like curved, like, that. You don't need to be able to use that and bench with it if your flexibility isn't such, if you're a power lifter. You just need to be able to use a straight bar, pause, and press. That's all you need to be able to do. And even on the deadlift, as long as you can do it with a neutral spine, you're flexible enough. If you can't do any of those things, then yeah, work on some mobility. And I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with using a buffalo bar on a bench or even on a squat. But I think a lot of times flexibility and mobility is a little overstated. And I think people tend to spend a little too much time on it. I wouldn't call it wasted time, but I think they spend a little too much time on it. And look, I'm sitting here saying I'm not the kind of guy that can do that pose where they always did that test in school where you reached your two hands behind your back and tried to touch them. I can't even do that, but I don't need to do that. I can overhead press without pain. I can deadlift now. I can get into position and, depending on the weight, hold that position and perform the movement, and I can actually squat below parallel. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. I don't think people need to worry about that too much, and that was my point of bringing that up. A little bit of a longer video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I will give you an update next week to let you know how everything's going. Oh, quick note, I am deloading every 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks on this particular program. I enjoyed deloading every 2 weeks in the past, but given how much little time I have, 13 weeks seems like a lot, but I know tomorrow I'm going to have a week left and be like, oh my God. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, I said I need to spend as much time doing actual working sets and focusing on actual working sets rather than deloading. So it's forcing me to keep the working set weights a little more moderate, since I won't be deloading quite as much as I've sort of grown accustomed to and sort of enjoyed. So with that in mind, it's every 3 weeks I'll be deloading, and deloading's a little bit different. I have it written down. I don't exactly remember how I worked it in there, but in the past I've basically done 5 sets of one, an idea I got from Brian Carroll, and I believe I decided on doing something just a little bit different, a little more volume. The idea of almost making like a pump week. But the weights are moderate, and it's just a slow creep to the heavier weights, and that's my plan, and I hope it works. We'll see. If not, there's always next year. There's always more time. So I'm not going to get hung up on too much else or anything else. I'm not going to get hung up on all the details. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Shit happens. There's always more time, and worst case, I'm going to learn a lot from it. And here's hoping it even works. I don't want it to work half as well as I'm hoping. I want it to work at least 95% as well as I'm hoping it does. And as of right now, everything's feeling pretty good. So, actually, everything's feeling good. It's not even pretty good. It's definitely feeling totally good. So with that in mind, don't spend too much time on mobility if you don't really need it. Don't worry about being wrong. Just because you write your own program and it totally ends up being a bust and you end up looking stupid, there's nothing wrong with that. You'll learn a lot. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to learn. As long as you learn from a failure, it was worth it. Some people even say it's not a failure because you learned. Like, no, it's a failure. You need to accept that and move forward. But there's nothing wrong with failing. You just need to acknowledge it, learn from it, figure out what you did wrong. You're going to be the best teacher of yourself if you fail over and over and over. Those are always the best teachers, is people who failed more than anybody else, because they can tell you what was wrong and why this didn't work. Well, assuming they actually take time to examine it, they'll be able to tell you why. But they'll at least be able to tell you what. So learn what makes you fail, and then fix it. And if you don't, then what's your excuse?